It's Crunchy Brown, yeah! What's up, guys? It's Crunchy Brown here, aka your favorite card dealer, and today I'm going to be going over my favorite Union Arena deck at the moment, the Phantom Troupe, featuring the Zoldyck family, because who doesn't love being the villain? The deck has been getting me results at locals, getting me some winner cards, and most importantly, it feels good to pilot. It's got a lot of draw power, a lot of damage to cards, as well as ways to disrupt your opponent's energy line. So let's quit wasting time, let's get right into it. Alright, so we're going to start with our zero cost cards. I am running 14 of them in the deck just because I would rather get kicked in the dick for 20 minutes straight than have to brick in this game.
What you say? That you only meant well, cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the...
It is the worst card game ever when it comes to bricking. I absolutely hate it. So let's try not doing that. So we're going to run 3 Finks. Great card overall, a zero cost. When played, you draw one and then you trash one card. And then out of life, it does have a trigger. So essentially you can restand one of your cards if it's already blocked. And then it also gains 3000 BP, which is great. We love to see it. Sometimes just stops your opponent from being able to swing that next check in. Next, we're going to be running 3 Pakunoda. I love this card. She's a great early game blocker. When sidelined, you just draw a card, so you basically always want to block with her. Sometimes just early on you can swing, you'll hit a special card, there's no other target, and so she dies and you just get to draw, which is awesome. Plus you got that special card out of the way, which is what we always want early on. We're also running 4 Gitteriker. Not much to this card. It's just a raid target for Illumi, because it is also considered Illumi. That's the text of the actual card. It says this card is also treated as Illumi, which is great. If you've watched the anime, read the manga, you know why. So pretty cool card overall. Trigger out of security, just take it to hand. And then Crollo does the same. We're obviously running 4 because he's kind of like the big boss of the deck, obviously being the leader of the Phantom Troupe. So you do want this guy to be on board at least once per game. You kind of need him just for raid Crollo later on. So great card overall. Then we are running 4 Kaluto for our 2 cost. This card is really, really clutch, and it's what kind of lets you speed up. I wasn't running her initially when I was, first kind of running the Phantom Troupe deck, and then I just found that she's way too useful. So essentially, when this character is active, she generates 1 extra energy. So when you play her down, she only generates 1, but then on the next turn, since she'll be active, she now generates 2. And since she's just a 2 cost, 2 energy, 1 action point, it's great. You can get her out super early and she's super helpful. Then we run just the 1 Shizuku. You could take this card out. I've kind of thought about it, but I do just like getting that extra draw in kind of early game. So her on play is just draw a card. Super simple. I just run her at 1. Every now and again, if you raid over Crollo, which I'll kind of explain later, you can reactivate the effect as well if you ever need to. So she can be pretty useful. Then we are running 3 Nobunaga. Initially, I didn't run this card. I was running Franklin over Nobunaga. The reason for that is that Franklin gives you 2 energy, whereas Nobu only gets you 1. But in the current meta and how there's a lot of 4K bodies that kind of just get spammed out from a lot of decks, I feel like Nobunaga is very essential. So his when played is if you have 3 or more Phantom Troupe affinity cards on your field, choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line and it loses 1000 BP until the end of the turn. It doesn't seem like much, but with other effects that we will be able to trigger, it comes in super clutch. Plus he's a 3.500 BP card, so not a big body per se, but you can get some early pressure on with him too, so pretty useful overall. I am a big fan. Next up is our color card. So since you can only have 4 of these, I am running 4 Illumi. On play, draw a card, which is kind of like Shizuku, but it does generate 2 energy, which is incredibly useful. And then the effect from security, so or life, I should say. I'm a ex-Digimon player. I shouldn't say ex, I still play Digimon, but hey, here we are. So the trigger for this is play 1 purple card with 2 or less required energy and 1 AP cost from your sideline set to active on your front line, which is nice. I mean, obviously all of our zeros can come into play. Shizuku can come into play, Kaluto as well. Usually when this comes out of my life, I try to play out a Pakunoda, just because then I can block afterwards and get another draw. But Shizuku is just as useful. You play her, you just draw one. So really good. But this is also another target for Illumi later on. So we do have 8 targets to raid over, which is very, very nice. Next up, we have Phaeton. Big fan of this card. I just wish it didn't cost 2 action points. Because it does, it feels a little bad to run sometimes. So I've kind of played around with the numbers on this one, but I'm pretty comfortable having it at 2. It does generate 2 energy, which is nice. So his on play is you can choose up to one of your opponent's characters on their front line and give it minus 2,000 BP until the end of the turn. If you have 4 or less life, you can minus 3,000 BP instead. So pretty useful. It does clear out some bodies, and we can re-trigger the effect as well, which I'll explain in a little bit. And then my favorite card of the deck, we have for Uvogin, the big boy. If you've checked out Hunter x Hunter, you know how powerful this guy is. Super cool character, one of my favorites. The card is very powerful, and it represents the character very well. So he has damage too, and he is just a 3.5 BP character. Sorry, 3,500 BP character. But very important, during your turn, this character gains 1,500 BP. So that means when it's your turn and you're attacking with this, he is effectively a 5,000 BP double damage character. So people are going to want to block this. And I mean, if they don't, that's just double damage on your end, but it's very hard. And since he only costs 1 action point and only 4 energy, you can get these out very early game. And if you can get like 1 or more on board, your opponent just kind of feels extremely pressured, right? Because now they're just like, oh, I have to block. And of course, since we are in a meta where there's a lot of 4K bodies, they still, like, if they do choose to block, they just die, right? So he's kind of a good way of clearing out their bodies at the same time. Next up, we have 2 Hisoka. So I did mention earlier that this deck has ways of kind of messing up your opponent's energy line, and this is why. So Hisoka is a 6 energy, 2 action point card. So it is expensive to play. It does have Impact 1, which is very useful in the meta. It is also a 4,500 BP card. So you can block the 4K bodies safely, which is really nice. You can also swing over them with Impact. It's great. But so when you play this character, this really messes up your opponent. And I guess one of the key factors of success with this deck is that a lot of people just don't know what it does, which is extremely useful in a competitive setting. So what Hisoka does, it catches a lot of people off guard, is that you can choose 1 character on your opponent's energy line and move it to their front line. If their opponent's front line is full, you may choose 1 character on both their front and energy line and swap them instead. So if there's something that you know you can't swing over because it's just going to block, you could technically play Hisoka and then swap it out with something smaller in the back, or you can just mess up their energy, right? So like if you're playing against Kurapika, for example, and they have 6 energy in the back and you want to screw that up, just drop Hisoka early game, which you can do, and I'll show you guys later. So you can get this out as early as turn 3, which is great. And so, yeah, once you do that, like you can pull out their Leorios, you can pull out their Neons, like things like that. You can just kind of screw up, like pull out some of their double energy providers, and their next turn is kind of screwed up. There are also ways of doing this more than once per turn, which I will also explain in a little bit. Next card I'm going to talk about is Illumi. Super strong card. I love this card so much because it provides pressure fairly early game, and it also is a great way of drawing cards. So the raid trigger for Illumi is that it gets damage 2, and then when played, choose up to one of your opponent's characters, and you gain draw 2 cards if the chosen character is sidelined until the end of the turn. So very, very strong card. Essentially, you get to raid, and then you pick something on their front line, and if it dies that turn, you just draw 2. So let's say if you attack with this and they block with that specific card, then you draw 2. You could also play a card from hand to just kill it, and then again you draw 2. So drawing 2 is very, very powerful. There are situations where you're going to be able to raid twice in a turn or more. You know, I've never done a triple raid in one turn, but I'm sure you can. But if you were to do that and target the same character, then you would draw more, right? So if I raid twice with 2 Illumis and I target the same character, then it has, you know, draw 4. And then if it dies for whatever reason, so if I kill it or if they block, I'm drawing 4 cards, which is huge in this game. Great card. And again, double damage, especially with the Uvogans already being a thing. You can kind of see how this creates a lot of early game pressure, right? I've had a lot of situations where I've just got like, you know, 4 double attackers on board and my opponent just kind of has to deal with it. They go, okay, I guess I'm kind of screwed at this point. So you start getting rid of their bodies because they have to block because nobody just wants to take double damage. It's great. I love it. Absolutely. And then I'm going to get on to Krollo. So the Raid Krollo is a very, very strong card. I'm a big fan of it. It provides Impact 1, which is great. When played, you can choose one character with the Phantom Troupe affinity on your field and, other than Krollo, and activate its when played ability. So, I mean, you know how earlier I said you could trigger Hisoka more than once, so you can play a Hisoka for 2. So, you know, you slam this big bad boy down early game, you pull something out of their back line, and then you raid on Krollo, and boom, you get to re-trigger this effect. You can pick any of your Phantom Troupe on plays and re-trigger it, as long as it's not another Krollo. So you could technically pull 2 characters out of their energy line early game and just screw them up. I've done it many times. And in some cases, my opponent just doesn't have a way to deal with it. So their next turn, because they don't have the energy to do anything, they can't really get rid of the cards you have on front. They can't even really play anything. Like, unless they have other 0s or 1s, like cheap cards to play in the back, a lot of the times they just kind of brick. And so you kind of force them into a brick mid-game, which is excellent. I absolutely love it. Also worth mentioning that you can also re-trigger Phaeton. So you could, in theory, you know, play a Phaeton, minus 3k something on their board, raid into Krollo, do it again. And so it's a great way of just getting rid of bodies while kind of maintaining that pressure, which is kind of what this deck does. It's very combo heavy. And the more you play it, the more you'll kind of learn different situations and you know, when you can apply pressure, and when you can, you know, just play things and then re-trigger effects, and you kind of get the ball rolling, and it's really, really fun to play. It just feels great overall. Now we're going to go into our, I guess we call them the options if we're looking at Digimon play here. So our final triggers are Underworld Resident. So same as any other deck, you play this for 3 energy, 1 action point. So you choose 2 of your AP cards and switch them back to active. And obviously, if this is the last card in life, you get to just heal 1, which is great. You know, pretty standard stuff, but it works really great with everything else in the deck. And then when it comes to our special cards, I am running 3 of Skill Hunter Bandit Secret, as well as 1 of Dragonhead Long Toe Jihua, and I really hope I said that right. The reason that I'm running 1 of these is that there's a lot of situations where if I'm playing against Kurapika specifically, they have 5k bodies, and there's basically nothing that this deck can do to clear them out short of this card. Obviously, if any of these comes out of life, you get to kill the 5k Kurapikas, which is great. But this one specifically reads, choose 1 character with 3000 BP, 3000 or less BP on your opponent's front line, and then sideline it. If 3 or more Zoldyck family affinity cards are on your field, it's 5000 or less. So very useful considering how many Zoldyck family cards we run in the deck. So, you know, obviously that's something to keep in mind. It's very easy to trigger this effect when you've got 4 Illumis here, another 4 here. We've got 4 Gitarakur, 4 Kaluto. You know, it goes very quickly, getting 3 of them on your board. So I might actually bump this up to 2 and then 2 and 2. I've kind of been playing around with it, so it's something that I'm debating. If you guys think that's a good idea, I mean, feel free. Absolutely. I don't think it's bad by any means. And then there's Skill Hunter Bandit Secret. This card is very, very, very useful because you get to kind of re-trigger some Krollo effects. And I say some because it's not as powerful as raiding into Krollo. And that's something that you will kind of learn as you play the deck. And it's kind of unfortunate. I don't know why they made it so underwhelming compared to some of the removal cards in the game, but it is what it is. We're kind of just stuck with it. So it reads, choose one character on your opponent's front line. It loses 3,000 BP until the end of the turn. If Krollo is on your field, choose up to one character with 3 or less required energy and Phantom Troupe affinity on your field other than Krollo and activate its when played ability. So this card is essentially why we run Nobunaga over Franklin. So you play it. Let's say they've got a 4K body on board, you give it minus 3,000, and then if you have a Krollo on field, so that can be just the regular Krollo or the rated Krollo, it doesn't really matter, but as long as there's a Krollo somewhere on your field, you can re-trigger another Phantom Troupe members when played. Except it can't trigger Phaeton because it has to be 3 energy, 1 action point cost. Or lower, right? So you could technically re-trigger Shizuku to draw another card. You can, do Finks if you want to draw 1, trash 1. Or then you can do Nobu to actually re-trigger another minus 1,000. So essentially you could play this if you have Krollo and Nobu on board, you can minus 4,000 something and get rid of it, which is nice, especially in the current meta. It kind of comes into play pretty often. So I did bump Nobu. Actually, I used to only run Franklin, which Franklin's on play, for those of you who don't know, is you give the whole board minus 500. The problem is that triggering it with this required too many resources. I'd have to play the Franklin for one, then I'd have to play this. So then I would give, the whole board minus 500 plus one character gets minus 3,000. And then I would have to have the Krollo on board to re-trigger the Franklin to give another minus 500. It didn't come up very often, I'll be honest with you. And I wasn't so much a fan of it. And having to have that extra resource is a bit annoying. So I prefer just kind of running it like this, having the Nobus out early and then drawing into this and then kind of going nuts with it. So that's the deck. It works really, really well, guys. I'm going to show you quickly kind of how to ramp up quickly and then just apply a ton of pressure. But that is really the name of the game with this deck. It is applying pressure early on with the Illumis and the Uvogans. And I mean, if you aren't really seeing them that early in the game, trying to screw up their energy line with Krollo and Hisoka works really well as well. And up to that point, before you even get into any of these guys, you have a lot of ways of just drawing, right? With the Pakunodas early game, the Finxes where you can draw 1, trash 1, the Illumis and the Shizuku to just draw. You go through your deck pretty quickly, and it feels really good. There's also, I believe, around 28 triggers out of life. So, if your opponent's just kind of swinging early game and you don't really have anything up there, chances are they're going to be giving you some pretty good ammo to continue on your ongoing turns. So, super fun deck to play. Like I said, it's pretty combo heavy, especially when it comes to Skill Hunter, Bandit Secret, and the Krollos, and then, kind of choosing what you want to do. And it feels really strong at the moment. I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't say it's tier 1 along with Purple Bleach, but it does really well. I typically will win against Purple Bleach playing this deck. Obviously, there's always going to be games where they just pull a crazy turn and just kind of, board wipe, and then they just go nuts. And then it's really hard to reestablish game. But overall, the deck does really well in the current meta. So, if you're looking for something new to play and you don't really feel like playing Purple Bleach and you want just to kind of switch things up and have a good time, I highly suggest the deck. It's great. It feels really good. And like I said, I've been having results with it at locals, so I will continue playing this. It's kind of been my day one deck. It's what I've been playing since the game came out. I really, really enjoy it. I've tweaked it a lot since, the early days. Some people run just pure Phantom Troupe, and that's kind of how I had started with it initially, but I really think that this variation of the deck is much stronger than just pure Phantom Troupe or pure Zoldyck. So, there are other decks as well. Sorry, not decks, but there are other cards that do kind of fit in, but I'm not a big fan, so I'm going to just kind of go over them really quickly. The 2-cost Krollo, obviously this card is another target for Krollo. A raid target, I should say. The problem with it in this specific variation of the deck, I'm not a huge fan of it. So this card, very simple. You look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal 1 Phantom Troupe affinity card other than Krollo, which is the kicker here. So it has to be other than Krollo among them. Add it to your hand, place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order, and if you added a card to your hand, you place 1 card from your hand to your sideline. So it's essentially a search with a, draw 1, trash 1. The only problem is that it only picks up Phantom Troupes, and it also won't pick up Krollo. So that doesn't really work with this deck, unfortunately, because there's a lot of times where I would play this card when I did run it, and I would just whiff, because I would get a bunch of Zoldyck family cards or Krollos you know, like when you're just looking for the 4-cost Crollo and you play this, and then because you don't have a choice, right? Like sometimes if this is the only Crollo you have in hand, and you need to lay out a Crollo to, you know, try to go into something next turn, so you'll play him, and then you'll end up bottom decking cards that you really want, which is super annoying, and it kind of screws up your next draws, right? So I despise having to bottom deck, you know, Illumis, Crollos, any of your cards here. So the Skill Hunter, the Dragon Head, the Underworld Resonant, all of those get bottom decked because they're not Phantom Troupe affinity, unfortunately. So not a big fan of this card overall. I think it's bad. Maybe if you're running pure Phantom Troupe, it has its place, but in this variation, it is Garbo. If you're looking for a card to play instead, I would just play Spider Tattoo. Sure, it doesn't provide a body on board, but it's basically the same thing, just better. You look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 2 character cards with Phantom Troupe affinity among them, and add them to your hand. So you're actually picking up 2 cards. You don't have to trash anything either. You just place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. And so this actually lets you pick up Crollo as well. So if you are looking for this Crollo, you play this for, you know, 1 action point, reveal 4, you could technically pick up 2 Crollos. Hell, even if you didn't have a target Crollo, you can technically pick up both Crollos with the Spider Tattoo, and now you're cooking, you know, because you can actually, if you had 3 AP, play this for 1, pick up both Crollos, play 1 Crollo right into it. There you go. You're good. You're chilling. It also has the active, same as Sphinx, where you reactive something and give it 3000 BP. The other Crollo does the same as the Illumi, where you just pick something up from your sideline with 2 energy cost and 1 action point cost, and you just play it as active, which is, you know, that's why I'd rather just play the Illumi. It's a double energy provider. On play, you draw 1. It's just a better card overall. Sure, it is a 3 cost, but it just does better overall with this deck anyways. And then the other card, some people will ask me why I don't run it. It is Silva. It is a great card, I'm not going to lie. The problem is it's a little slow for the current meta, and it's only 4000 BP. So I did used to run Silva. I'm a big fan of Silva. I just don't think he's kind of good at the moment. So he does have Impact 1, and so his main effect is you can trash 2 cards from your hand, and then it gains Snipe, which we all know Snipe is incredibly powerful. But he only has 4000 BP, so he can't really survive the turn, which is the problem. So, you know, 5 energy cost, 2 action points. You play him the next turn. Hopefully you don't die. You keep him there. You can sometimes, you know, wipe some things. Again, I don't think it's bad. I would just rather see Hisoka screw up their energy line, and I get Impact anyways. Plus, he can block, you know, the big boys in the meta. So, obviously, outside of the Snipe Graphica, it can block everything in game, which is super useful. And since, like I said earlier, you're going to be seeing a lot of 4K bodies, Hisoka just takes it over Silva for me personally. So I'm not saying you can't run it. You can absolutely try it, and you know, because the deck ramps up very quickly, you could technically get an early game Silva and then just kind of maintain it there, which is useful. But I still think Hisoka is better. Plus, being able to re-trigger the effect of Hisoka with Crollo is just much better than having a big boy out there that's probably not going to survive more than 1 turn. Let's be honest. Once this guy's on the field, your opponent wants to kill it. And I've had situations where I play him, I finally get him out, I swing with Impact, and the first check is a special card, and then I just lose him immediately. So doesn't feel great when it happens, but that's just the game that we play, right? So yeah, I'm going to show you guys a couple of combos, or not necessarily combos, but just going to kind of show you how the deck ramps up and what you can do early game. All right, so I don't know about you guys, but with this deck anyways, I prefer going second. Like 90% of the time, it just feels better. So let's say you were to start, you're going second, so whatever, you'll draw, and then 2 AP, boom, let's just play Gittericker and Crollo to start off, right? So we're chilling to this point. This is early on, nothing really matters. Turn 2, you'll draw again. Ideally, this is kind of like the sickest opening hand in my opinion. You go Kabuto for 1, and then your next turn you play Illumi, draw 1, and now you're chilling, right? So start of next turn, you're going to have 3 AP. By the way, if you guys are wondering where I got these AP, you can order them off eBay. They're jump promos from Japan. I've had a lot of people ask me about them. They're super sick, right? We got some JJK. I have a matching shirt for this. So great action points. They're foiled. They're really cool. They're not very expensive. Anyways, so Turn 3, you now have 6 energy, right? So you've got 2 from Illumi, 2 from Kaluto, 1 and 1. And this is where the floodgates kind of open for you. So now you can just kind of start going nuts, to be honest with you. So turn 3, I mean, if you wanted to, there's a number of things that you can do. I mean, you can literally go, you know, raid and Illumi because all you need is 5. You're, you know, generating 6. You could play down a new Vogan for the next turn. So now they're kind of facing down the barrel of obviously you have 1 damage to character on board. Now there's another one coming up that's 5k next turn. And then, you know, whatever you need to, you could drop down a Nobunaga. You can you know, if you really wanted to, this is kind of like a risque play, but you can go into Crollo early on. I wouldn't do it in this situation because you wouldn't have anything to re-trigger his effect, but it does have impact 1. So, you know, early on, if you wanted to, for 3 AP points, you have damage 2, impact 1, damage 2 in the back. You're chilling at this point. But I mean, there's other plays as well, right? So I mean, if you didn't want to go this route, we could just kind of reset the board back to our 3 AP. We're having a good time. Our opponent is probably not going to be shortly. You can, for 2 AP, slam down a Hisoka. Now you're screwing up their energy line, right? It's only turn 3 at this point. Whatever they have set up is probably not on the front line. Depending on what you're playing against, you know, they're probably just trying to set up as fast as you are. You could pull out one of their double energy providers if you wanted to, and then it's kind of up to you. You can either go into Illumi, so now you're kind of forcing them to have to block. Ideally, I mean, they don't have to, but if you pulled something out of their front, out of their energy line, you give it the effect of Illumi. So now if it dies, you draw 2, so you swing. So either you clear that out and draw 2, or you get 2 checks in, which is awesome. Alternatively, if you really want to screw up their energy line, what you do instead is you go into the Crollo, because now you can reactivate the effect of Hisoka. So you could pull 2 things out of the energy line super early game, and then you swing and they can't block it regardless because this has impact. And then worth noting, next turn, this also has impact, right? So it shows that the deck can provide a lot of early game pressure very easily. Getting to 6 energy by turn 3 is incredibly easy with this deck. It would happen more often than you would think. I'd say this is like a very standard opening with this deck. And yeah, I mean, being able to yoink 2 things out of their energy line in 1 turn is huge. Like, they usually don't really know what to do. And anything that's kind of an energy provider in this game has low BP, right? So if it's like, let's say an Illumi or a Kaluto or whatever, next turn you just restand both these bodies. So sure, you only have 2 bodies on board, but whatever you yoinked out of their line probably doesn't have step, so it can't go back. That's another thing to note. Don't be pulling things out that have step, because it kind of just nullifies everything. You pull something out with step, next turn they just return it, so it doesn't really matter. There aren't that many cards in the game that have it at the moment, but just something to kind of be conscientious about. But yeah, whatever bodies you pulled out won't be able to swing over Crollo and Hisoka, so you're just blocking their attacks if they even choose to swing with them anyways, and you can slowly pick at them as you, over the course of the game, you know, start laying down your double damage cards. So definitely something to keep in mind. And I mean, you always have these guys set up. It's so easy to kind of go into all this. Yeah, the deck feels great, like I said earlier, and it has a lot of early game potential. You do have to kind of be aware of what you have in hand, though, because there are situations where you'll have a great opening like this, but you kind of used up all your resources way too early, right? So you burn through all your ammo, and then once they start removing bodies from the board, you sometimes just don't have a great hand afterwards. Like, I just have 3 Nobunagas, for example. And then you're kind of screwed. So then you're spending your time trying to like draw and just survive. So it's a question of like, yeah, I can go into this very early and do a lot of damage, but do I have a follow-up to it if my opponent has the answer, right? And sometimes that's something you have to think about when playing Union Arena. So, you know, try not to kind of go all in too early if you can, unless you obviously are outpacing your opponent, right? Like, if you're like at 6 energy and you've got all the cards in hand and they're still kind of building their backline, and then you Hisoka Crollo, screw up their whole backline, then feel nuts, you know, or sorry, go nuts, I should say. Just you can go crazy at that point. It doesn't matter. And then you start pumping out the Vogans, the Illumi, and then you kind of have them in this awkward situation where they're trying to rebuild their backline, if they even can, right? Because they might not even have the energy or the cards that kind of help them do it. So like I said earlier, you're getting them to brick mid-game, which is huge, because then you just win, basically. Or they have very little energy in the back, and all they can really do at that point is just kind of slam down cards that aren't very strong at the front line. So something to keep in mind. It is very possible, and you're more likely than you think to be able to do it early game. So yeah, I mean, that's the deck. It runs incredibly well. It's super smooth, no bricking problems, super consistent, very strong. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. You know, please like, subscribe, just destroy all those buttons. You know, let's get this fan base going, guys. But yeah, I mean, if you like what you saw, I'm going to be doing a lot more content, mostly for Bandai games, so Union Arena and some Digimon as well. I plan on just sharing deck profiles, you know, showing off some cards, you know, opening product. So a lot of that I'll do, you know, case openings and things like that. I also will be selling a lot of cards. So if you guys, you know, when I'm doing case openings or any kind of product opening, if I pull a card that you're really interested in, just feel free to just send me a message and we can work something out. I'm located in Canada, but, I'll be doing sales between US and Canada. I have tons and tons of sales. If ever you guys are looking for reference checks or anything like that, any sales group has probably seen me many, many times posting cards and selling them. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. Let me know what you think about the deck, please. Let me know if you make any tweaks to it or anything like that. Or, if you do end up building it, let me know how it feels. Let me know if you, had a good time with it. But personally, I think this is probably my favorite deck in the game at the moment. I have obviously tested other decks, but this right now is what feels great. And like I said earlier, a lot of people don't know what this deck does. So, when you slam down your Vogan in the back and then you come up and say, oh yeah, this is double damage for 5k, they kind of just go, what? So you'll have a lot of moments like that with the deck. It's super fun, especially once you've got like a whole board of just double attackers at the front, double damage dealers at the front, and a lot of people just don't know what to do. So yeah, guys, that's it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.